What's up, my basic family? We're here with another episode of Christian Campfire Conversation C3 Podcast. Keegan and I are very, very excited for this episode. This has been a little while now since we've been talking about this, thinking about this. And so it's also been a little while since I've studied a lot of this, but I'm not going to talk about it too much. First, Keegan, how was your week, and what is your second least favorite fruit or vegetable?
So, to answer the first question, I will answer the first question in regards to last week because this is the beginning of this week. It was good. Yeah, I got to spend it with a lot of fun people, and then I got to go to the football game in Manhattan this weekend, so that was a lot of fun too. And then my second least favorite fruit or vegetable, probably, because I'm just thinking of my least favorite. So I'd say celery. Celery's probably the second.
Solid.
Because
what about if you put like peanut butter on it though?
I'm eating it for the peanut butter, so might as well just eat peanut butter. Celery is the only thing worse than celery is tomatoes, so yeah.
Oh wow.
So that's why it's the
Tomatoes
second
is the
worst
vegetable?
Yes, it is, and it's not a vegetable, so
It's a fruit. Oh, okay.
because the seeds, remember?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, we're not gonna get in that debate. I don't want to lose a friend today, so.
Not today.
Right.
Tomorrow.
Not today. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Well, that's an alright answer. I'll take it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll pose the same questions to you.
Oh, you're just gonna copycat me anyway.
Yeah.
So,
No, I'm not gonna be original. No.
My week was pretty busy, kind of a little stressful at times, but it was good nonetheless. And my second least favorite vegetable, I think I have to go with a cucumber, which is kind of along the same lines. Cucumber, celery, very, very similar in their flavor, and yeah. And what's even worse than a cucumber is cucumber water. I don't know which one of Satan's demons put those two together, but it's terrible. And combination, straight from Lucifer himself.
I think you're just like wrong and misinformed because cucumbers are, objectively a top 5 vegetable. So, really just hate the disrespect right now. Have you ever had a homegrown cucumber?
No. Probably
That's probably tastes a little.
similar.
Probably tastes pretty different actually.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. You're showing how uninformed you are right now. I hope you know that. Yeah. Cool.
Whatever. So, anyway, moving into the topic, I'm excited. I've been excited about this for a while now. Although I don't know why we haven't exactly done it yet, but yeah, we've just been kind of lacking on it a little bit. But today is our very first episode on a little mini-series on top of this other mini-series on false teachings, more clarified into the Church of Scientology. And I know I'm 9 years behind the hype when the first documentary came out on HBO and when the book came out, Going Clear, Scientology. But I don't care because I still find it interesting. Let me paint you guys a picture, okay? Me and Megan, my sister and I, in Wichita, just ate at Dempsey's Burger Pub, which is really
10
good,
out of 10. Yep.
And we're pulling out, and I was just like, Megan, we need to go. Is at the Church of Scientology? Pull in there. So we go into this we kind of pull in this parking lot, and Megan's like, wait, what is this again? She's confused. I'm like, it's a cult. Don't get sucked in. And I open up the door, and I get out, and we see this lady. She's kind of walking around outside. I'm like, hey, is this the Church of Scientology? And she's like, yeah, it is. I was like, I didn't know if you guys had time for an auditing session, which we'll get into, or what. And she was like, well, we usually do those by we usually schedule those by appointment. So are you going to be around Sunday? And I was going to go back home, so I wasn't going to be allowed. able to go. And then it's like, well, I'll show you guys a video that I usually show new people. And so we go in this old building. As we're getting in there, she's explaining some things about the building, how old it is, when the church, Scientology, acquired it, exactly how that happened. And she brings us into this room, and there is like some books. There's like this weird looking kind of like TV screen thing with this weird looking remote. There's Church Scientology emblems everywhere. There's stuff on the walls. There's readings. And she kind of pulls us into this, and there's like readings on both sides, and the symbol up above, and a quote from LRH that we're going to talk about just now. And this kind of weird thing, we watch this there's like 7-minute basically video biography of L. Ron Hubbard's life, which is the creator, the inventor, I'm going to say the word inventor of Scientology. He created this whole entire thing. And so Megan and I were watching this, she leaves, and I mean, we're just like exchanging glances of how weird this is. I snap a quick picture, and yeah, it was super interesting, and I talked a lot. And so then after that, she comes back in after it finishes. She's like, you guys have any questions? And I'm kind of nosing around looking at this Scientology creed, and she's like, I think I got a physical copy of those. And so we go into the other building, and there's all these books along the wall from LRH, and there's a couple other people in there, and there's some notebooks and some other things that I think I noticed that I can identify what they were. But overall, it was a weird experience, and that's what kind of spurred me on to start studying this religion called the Church of Scientology. And so, yeah. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, it's quite the experience, and it takes a lot of guts to do what you did. I don't know if I would have had the faith to do it. I've driven. I mean, I live here, and they have one here in Wichita, and I live here, and I've driven past it, and never have made time to swing on through there. And honestly, outside of oh gosh, why am I blanking on his name? The most famous Scientologist.
L. Ron Hubbard.
No.
Oh, Tom Cruise?
Yeah, aside from Tom Cruise, I didn't know anything about Scientology or really what it was. So this has been an eye-opening journey, or studying this has been eye-opening, if nothing else. Yeah,
and so there's a lot here. I have scratched the surface of researching Scientology. I haven't done a whole lot, especially not now since I've gotten to college. And so today we're going to look at this guy named L. Ron Hubbard, who is an interesting character. He is, like I said, the inventor of Scientology, this religion. And so the fact that I want to touch on is the discrepancies of the stories between what the Church of Scientology says and what the book Going Clear, Scientology, Hollywood, and the Prison of Belief by Lawrence Wright. They offer, vastly different perspectives on his life, and I tend to believe one over the other. And so, as long as you're good with the Keegan, I say let's just get into it.
Let's do it, yeah.
So in the video, Keegan also watched this video later on. I acquired some CDs, and so Keegan and I both watched the CD talking about L. Ron Hubbard's life, a summary of it based on the Church of Scientology. They claims that Hubbard, he was this child prodigy. He was reading well beyond his years in philosophy and science and religions. At young ages, they claim he was just this intellect at such a young age. He was highly adventurous, that he was widely traveled. But the Going Clear book provides a kind of different background, noting the exaggerated accounts that the Church of Scientology does, which I find interesting. They want to paint this picture of, hey, look how great this guy was when he was even a little kid, let alone when he gets older.
Right, and that that really plays into the Church of Scientology's beliefs, because one of their, I don't know if they would say it to be their core beliefs, but one of the things that they really believe is that each person is supernatural, and as you unlock more, as you grow in the Scientology religion, and you go up the levels, they say that you unlock more of this supernatural power. So exaggerating these stories to say that L. Ron Hubbard was just this like intelligent and person, that really plays into their hand very well.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so, going further on into his part of kind of education, the church just says, Hubbard, he was excelling at school, getting such good grades, and receiving advanced education, including this degree from George Washington University. And then Lawrence Wright kind of says, hey, that's not exactly true. He wasn't this great intellect like they say he was. He struggled academically. They found his report card, and it wasn't very good. And he didn't even get a degree from George Washington University. He didn't even get a degree. There's no record of him graduating with a degree. They're just inflating his academic record and, posing him as this just, such an, he's just so cool. He's just such an intellect, when it's just not true.
Yeah, and they just, they try to make such an idol out of him. I mean, this is the god of their religion. They, as you get into it, they kind of reveal that there are other powers that they think are causing all these things, which are kind of wild. But yeah, this is their model of a perfect Scientologist, based off the propaganda that the people are getting.
Yep, that's exactly right. It's just straight propaganda, saying, look how great this guy is, when he's not that great. As we're talking about, they also say, oh man, he was just this amazing war hero. He was decorated World War II hero. He was injured in battle, and he healed himself using these techniques found in Dianetics, and which is the scriptures for the Church of Scientology. And then, as Lawrence Wright points out in his book, that he shows military records that don't support this idea of him being a war hero, that he was the captain of the ship, and he made just boneheaded mistakes. He fired on a Mexican island that was unprovoked, pretty much. Mm-hmm. He fired all these shells on a submarine that turned out to be a log. It wasn't even a submarine. And he was, thinking, oh, we sunk it, we won this battle, and there's no evidence for that. No evidence for that whatsoever.
Well, and the interesting thing, too, about the book that he wrote, Dianetics, was not written with Scientology in mind. He wrote Dianetics, had a people liked it, and only after they liked it is when he decided to actually officially create this religion, quote unquote religion.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I want to touch on something too, that Lawrence Wright talks about in his documentary, is his affiliation with the occult. And now I'm not identifying him. I kind of want to, guilty by association. But when you're involved with a cult, I mean, that has an impact on you, whether you recognize it or not. And he was involved with the OTO cult, which is the Ordo Temple Orientius. It was founded in California in 1935. This chapter, the Agape Lodge, following World War II, it was the sole surviving OTO organization. So, kind of went through some leadership change. Aleister Crowley kind of took it over in 1925. And then in 1939, they initiated Jack Parsons. He was a jet fuel engineer who actually has a crater on the moon named after Jack Parsons. He moved in there, and then with his wife Helen, and then Jack Parsons had an affair with Helen's sister, his wife's sister, Sarah Northrup, kind of causing this rift between the sisters and the lodge's harmony. And then in 1945, L. Ron Hubbard became involved with the lodge, and there was some business venture, and L. Ron Hubbard backed out. Jack Parsons lost all his money. He kind of just dipped and stole Jack Parsons' Sarah Northrup, his little fling that he was going with, and it was just so interesting. And I want to point this out too, because what Parsons really was kind of trying to do was Parsons was trying to do this some sort of sexual black magic ritual to literally breed the Antichrist. That was what he was trying to do in this OTO cult, and he thought very highly of Hubbard, and he spoke of this sexual freedom, and Hubbard kind of took to that and took his girl and basically made him lose all his money, and then ran off and started to write Dianetics, which I think L. Ron Hubbard, I think his goal, I think what he was trying to do was solve what was going on in his head. I think he was genuinely messed up in his head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that this was maybe not a cry for help, but a search for the truth, a search for something that was true. And he kind of, they talk about how he traveled over the world. He saw the science of the West and the philosophy of the East, and he combined them two to make this book called Dianetics. Mm-hmm. And it was this breakthrough in mental health, and psychologists and the medical community were just totally against it. There's just no evidence that it works whatsoever.
Yeah, there in I think one helpful bit of information of L. Ron Hubbard's past that makes it really weird that he's writing he claims to be a factual book, a nonfiction book, is that his past writings, he has the world record for the most published writings, I think is what they said, because he was go ahead. He was a fiction writer. He wrote fiction. There were comic books and all these offlandish stories about just random things, which for his audience was great because, well, they knew it wasn't real, but he wrote really great stories. And now I think it's really interesting that he is writing a book and forming a religion off of things that people are probably hearing for the first time and claiming for them to be fact. But he says no, these are fact, and that just you can't say that's at least not a little weird.
Yeah. Yep. And so, no, I agree completely. So he just, the church portrays him as this guy who, based on this visionary, he founded this Church of Scientology based on these profound spiritual discoveries of people being spirits. That's what man is. And then, it was insane. And so, Wright talks about in his book, he argues that Scientology was a way for Hubbard to kind of retain control after the decline of Dianetics, positioning it as a religion for tax purposes. He wanted to get a tax break, and so he thought, if I find this religion, if I create this religion based on the Dianetic work, then I can make some money.
Right, and money they did make. There was, I think it was, the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s when they gained tax-free status from the IRS.
Yeah,
so
that was, we can talk about that later on.
Yeah.
But, the church would claim that Hubbard and Scientology, they were wrongly persecuted by governments and psychiatric institutions, media do their revolutionary ideas, but then they're just focusing on the documentary focuses on the legal battles that Hubbard faced. They were investigated by the FBI, the IRS. They were going to war with the IRS with just, I mean, stupid, silly, legal things that were going on. It was really just a power play that they were doing. We're going to talk about that.
And one of the things they post about in their documentary that Max got and we watched together was they say that they're the only new religion of the 20th century, which I think is such an odd thing to boast about because there's a reason that most religions aren't new. I mean, Christianity can obviously go back as far as time is, and so I wouldn't want my religion to be new. And in every other religion, they kind of have a way that ties themselves back to the beginning of time. But I don't know. But Scientology doesn't really give a solid answer for like being saved or like an afterlife. So. Yeah, so that's why I think that they can get around from being a new religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. And so, yeah, overall, L. Ron Hubbard was an interesting guy. Then, after he creates this Scientology, then he created what they called Sea Organization or Sea Org, and it expanded Scientology's reach globally. Has founded these different churches. The church portrays him as this leader who commanded a fleet of ships to avoid persecution and deliver Scientology worldwide. And it was just, it just kind of wasn't that way. I mean, that's kind of how this goes. Scientology expands. Dramatized is the Sea Org, all of L. Ron Hubbard's accomplishments, and then what's actually true is over here. He had such a gnarly grip on each and every person in Scientology, and still does today to have a grip on some people in Scientology. I mean, the Sea Org was more isolated and authoritarian phase in Hubbard's leadership, with strict control over his members. I mean, they were, in the documentary they talk about. I mean, these people were, forced to do manual labor for 8 hours a day for like no pay. And
and they were not treated well.
Not at all. And so I mean, and really, what I think Hubbard was doing was when he created the Sea Org was evading legal officials. I mean, I think he was evading the law by going into international waters and doing. I don't think he was doing any of that.
And he's just I really think what he was a paranoid old man that was, like you said, he was searching for answers and couldn't seem to find anything, and the what he had to do was continue to. It's just like when you tell a lie, you have to continue to tell more lies to back it up, and kind of the main premise of Scientology is you don't get all the information when you walk in the door the first time.
No.
That's
exactly true. I'm going to say like a first-hand encounter with that is, so Megan was kind of asking, she pulled out this book, she was talking about, saying, hey, look, like, we have all these books talking about, hey, how do you, parent kids? And Megan says, well, how do you parent kids? And she says, well, you'll have to read the book. I'm not going to tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
That word for word,
each of those books has a price.
Exactly.
That money goes towards the church, and they have to somehow claim that this money is being used within the organization because they are 401(c) or something, nonprofit organization, and so they've had creative ways of showing that. Trying to prove that they're a religious institution, but in reality, it's just a fictitious institution.
Yep, it is exactly right, and so L. Ron Hubbard, he died in 1986, and the church claims, they say, well, Hubbard didn't die. I mean, he voluntarily left his physical body to continue his spiritual work on another plane. That's what he did. That's what he was doing. And going clear is like, hey, he died in 1986 as a natural event, noting his cause of death was a stroke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably largely due to stress.
He was a very paranoid man. I mean, he was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Sarah Northrop talks about in her story of how, when they were on this lake at night, and she was asleep, and Hubbard woke up and saw Sarah smiling, to which he said that, oh, you're smiling thinking about somebody else, and hits her, and she goes out on this frozen lake late at night, and it's cold because she's afraid because of Hubbard's just total, paranoidness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a word, but
yeah, paranoia.
Paranoidness. Yeah, paranoia. That's right.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many of those claims stating that he was an abusive person towards his wife, and then also abusive toward that abuse also flows into some of the church practices too with their leadership. I don't know if the documentary necessarily touched on L. Ron Hubbard specifically, but with the guy who
the current leader.
Yeah, the guy who took over for him.
David Asprich? Is that his
No,
name?
it's David something.
Let me look it up, sorry.
Okay, yeah, but this guy who took over for LRH, there's stories of him being physically, being physical towards church leaders in order to try to get his way. David Miscavige, right? And it's manipulation, and they're trying to get, and people don't see it as wrong, because they're just fully bought into this vision that is being sold to them, and literally sold to them currency.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We'll talk about that a little later on, about the identity that they have whenever they're in this organization, or lack of, essentially. Kind of talk about a little bit more, but in a nutshell, that's L. Ron Hubbard. There's way more to say about him and his life. I encourage you to go check out the documentary, go check out his book. It talks more in depth about it if you want to learn more about it. Overall, he created this religion that, because I do believe it's a religion, that is showing people away from the true gospel, that is Jesus Christ. And so that's why we're talking about it. That's why it's important to talk about it, because the Church of Scientology has like a little under 40,000 people worldwide. So that's 40,000 souls that are adhering, listening to this teaching, and so I think it's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's kind of just what you'll notice about a lot of these videos is you might say, well, that's not a lot of people that are falling prey to this false message, but this is eternal souls we're talking about that have not only turned their, or not chosen God, but chosen something that is completely opposite of what God's in what God wants for our lives.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, thank you all for listening. Unless you got anything else, Keegan.
No, I think that's it.
All right. Peace out.
Peace out.
Basic family.